How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Max here, and on March 21st, just over a month from now, the NHL will be having its trade deadline. So even more so than we've heard this season, the rumors of where players are going and what teams are going to be doing at the deadline are only ramping up. I figured, why not take a look at all 32 teams across the league and decide whether they're going to be buying at the deadline, selling, or just staying the same. Now, we're going to be doing this in a tier maker setup. I'm sure a lot of you have seen them. And there are going to be 5 different tiers, starting off with the buyers. So these are teams that I believe are going all in. They want to win the Stanley Cup this year. They feel they have the team to do it, and they're willing to trade picks and prospects to get additional pieces to help them become a super team per se. We have conservative buyers. These are teams that feel that they can make a playoff push, but may need a few more trades to do that, and they're not necessarily looking to force and push trades. They may be a little more lenient, but if the right trade is there, they're definitely going to do it. I then have conservative selling teams. Similar to the conservative buyers, these are teams that might feel that they're not going to have a playoff chance, but they're not really looking to send off assets, or they might not have any assets to really trade away. And we also have sellers. These are the opposite of buyers, of course, and these are teams who know that they're definitely not going to contend, so they're looking to trade any and all assets that have any sort of value and get picks and prospects for the future. And then in the middle, we have these neutral teams. Now, there are going to be a few neutral teams in here, and a lot of them are teams that I feel could be conservative buyers, could also be conservative sellers. It's just going to depend on what they feel comes in the offers or anything like that. I do feel that these teams are going to listen to offers and they're going to entertain offers, but they're going to sort of take their time. So without further ado, let's get into this. Starting off with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, in my opinion, the Edmonton Oilers are going to be conservative buyers. Biggest reason for this is they don't really have the space or the assets to acquire new talent, and I don't necessarily think they're cup contenders. I do think they're buyers more so than they are staying neutral because they have McDavid and Draisaitl, and then when you have the two of the best players in the world, you need to be buying. Next up, the Florida Panthers. They are going to be full-on buyers. We have heard players like Owen Tippett and their first-round pick and other prospects are definitely on the move. They're in talks with Chychrun and Klingberg and all the top guys to be traded away, and I definitely think they want to win the Stanley Cup this season, and I think they can. So don't be surprised if they make one of the bigger trades this trade deadline. Next up, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm putting them conservative buyers. Similar to the Edmonton Oilers, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning don't necessarily have a lot of the cap room to make these big moves, but if the right move is there and they can add some depth to that team, they definitely will. The Vegas Golden Knights, again, similar situation. They already made the Jack Eichel trade, but if Mark Stone is going to come back for the playoffs, they might want some additional depth. They might want some additional help, so we'll see if they decide to make any moves. The Washington Capitals, I put in a neutrals position. I don't necessarily think that any moves that they make really pushes them far into this really competitive Eastern Conference. I don't think it makes them a deep playoff team, but at the same time, I don't think they're looking to sell any assets. They might just stay the same, and if a trade for a depth piece for maybe a later round draft pick comes up, that's the sort of trade that they'll make. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, last few years you got of Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin in their top prime. I'm not saying that they're anywhere close to retirement, but you know what I mean. So I think they're conservative buyers. I don't think they're going to be as aggressive, but I do think they will try to make some moves. The Philadelphia Flyers, I'm going to put them as conservative sellers. We've heard a lot of rumors around Claude Giroux. I'm more so putting them in conservative because I don't know if any of these big talk trades are going to happen. We often hear them with these big fish trade targets, especially guys like Claude Giroux, who's been a captain in Philadelphia forever. I'd be surprised if a trade happens. Personally, I have my doubts, but you never know. Now, the San Jose Sharks, I was teeter-tottering between neutral or conservative seller. The reason for this is I feel like their only real big free agent, not free agent, that they could trade away is Thomas Hertl. And I don't think a Thomas Hertl trade happens. In a weak division, I think they're on the borderline of being a playoff team, which puts a lot of teams in a struggling position because, hey, maybe we can make a run that nobody expects us to. But at the same time, you don't really have that roster, so I put them in neutral. Next up, the Los Angeles Kings. Similar situation. I think they're still committing to that rebuild. I think they are going to follow the course of this rebuild. They're going to let the guys develop. I don't see any trades happening for them. Minnesota Wild, I think they're going to be conservative buyers. I think they are a team that could definitely be a buyer, but they're not going to be as aggressive. They might wait a couple more years to make that aggressive push, but at the same time, they do have a really solid team, and maybe a couple more pieces, if they are aggressive, could get them over the hurdle. The Winnipeg Jets, I put them as well in the neutral position, similar to the other neutral teams so far. I don't think they have as many pieces they can trade away. And the pieces that they do trade away, Andrew Kopp, they could get a good market for him, but they might decide to just hang on to him. So for the Winnipeg Jets, I'm going to put them at neutral. Vancouver Canucks, I'm going to put conservative seller. We've heard rumors about a Connor Garland trade, the JT Miller, and now Brock Besser trades. While I don't necessarily think any of them happen anytime soon, they very well could. And for that reason, I'm putting them as conservative sellers, where if they see an offer or they hear an offer that they really just can't refuse, we could see the Canucks move one of those guys that I just named, but I don't think it's their goal to really trade them away right now. Next up, the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs are likely going to either make the Stanley Cup Finals or win the Stanley Cup within the next 5 years. I know a Bruins fan who has often hated on the Leafs saying that, and shout out to any Leafs fans who are watching this far out. But I do think the time is right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs to win a cup. They're going to be full buyers. They are pretty strained right now, but if they can make any moves that will help that team, wherever it could be, I would highly expect them to do so. Kyle Dubas definitely wants to show that he is serious, and I think rightfully he should be. The Ottawa Senators, I'm going to put them as a neutral team. Now, the Senators do have a couple pieces that they could potentially trade, but I think similar to Los Angeles Kings, they're going to stick with this rebuild. They've had some big injuries and big setbacks that have made them worse of a team this year than many expected them to be, so I don't think they're going to rush and make a big trade. The New York Islanders, I'm going to put them as a neutral team. I could also see them being a conservative selling team. They're a bit of an older team, and they might try to start rebuilding more so. They've kind of struggled a bit this season, both offensively and defensively hasn't been as good, but at the same time, do you have many assets that you can really trade? That's the question. The New York Rangers, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, they are definitely going to be buyers. They are a team that we have heard reports that aren't going to be as aggressive as, say, the Florida Panthers, but I definitely think they're going to be aggressive, and they should. They have arguably the Vezina favorite goaltender in Igor Shesterkin. They have the Norris winner from last year who could repeat this year in Adam Fox. They have Artemi Panarin, who is one of the best left wingers in the game, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, who was in the Rocket Richard talk. They have a very solid team over in the Big Apple, and I wouldn't be surprised if they went out to get another big target, potentially trading a guy like Alexis Lafreniere or Capo Caco to do so. For the Columbus Blue Jackets, I put them at a neutral team as well. We could potentially see one of their goaltenders get traded, even a Max Domi get traded. While I don't necessarily expect it, I also don't necessarily see them buying. They're definitely not going to buy, but I don't see them pushing any trades to sell. Les Montreal Canadiens, they are definitely a selling team. A historically bad season for that franchise. They've already traded away Tyler Toffoli. Guys like Jeff Petrie, Ben Sherrod is one of the bigger trade assets. Even potentially a Brendan Gallagher. Any big guys who either have term or are going to be free agents, veteran guys, you need to ship. Montreal needs to commit to a full rebuild. Any picks and prospects they can get for that, I definitely think they should. St. Louis Blues are going to be a neutral team. When you're in a weak Western Conference, you could potentially make a far run, and the Blues, they've done it before in 2019. As a Burns fan, I obviously have firsthand experience of that, and I don't know if they're going to be as aggressive to push, but they shouldn't sell, in my opinion. The only person that they could sell is Tarasenko, but I don't necessarily know if you could find the right fit right now, and I feel a Tarasenko trade would be a rush trade, so I'm going to put them at neutral. Nashville Predators, pretty much same thing, copy and paste from the Blues. They're going to be a neutral team. The New Jersey Devils, neutral team as well. These teams are like just borderline. They're the tweener team where they might entertain offers, but I don't really see them pushing to make a trade for good or for worse. So I'm going to put them at neutral. Colorado Avalanche, we've known for how long that they're a contender. If they don't win a Stanley Cup within the next few years, I'm genuinely going to be shocked and confused. This could be their year. I'm sure they feel it's their year. And similar to Florida, I think these two teams are going to be the most aggressive at the trade deadline. I 100% expect them to make a big splash. Chicago Blackhawks, I put them as seller. The Hawks have a few assets like Brandon Hagel, I believe Calvin DeHaan, and just a few other pieces that they could potentially get some assets for. They're having a bad season as well. And I think for them, just committing to a rebuild as well. I don't see any big fish names like Jonathan Taves or Patrick Kane getting moved. But at the same time, you never know. Arizona Coyotes, I'm putting them as a conservative seller. Now, you may think I'm going to jump and put them as a selling team, which would make sense, but they really only have like Phil Kessel and Jacob Chychrun. And the Chychrun trade, I have my doubts that it's actually going to happen, personally. And Phil Kessel trade, I mean, he's a veteran forward. At the end of the day, Arizona sounds like they might even be more of a buying team where they take on these big contract players for picks and stuff like that, as we saw them do in the offseason. There's been talks of them potentially doing that at the deadline. And so I put them as more of a conservative seller, more so than a full-on seller. The Red Wings, I put them as a neutral team, have a very young core. Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider have been phenomenal this season. They're going to be two of the Calder favorites by the end of the year. And I think, like the Kings, like the Senators, they're going to be a team that's going to commit to this rebuild and just follow the process. They've had a good season. They have Nedeljkovic in the back end. I think they should just commit to this rebuild and not push any trades. The Anaheim Ducks, I'm going to put as a conservative seller. They've got a few defensive pieces, and they've got a few players with term or expiring deals that could potentially be on the move. And I think for a team like them, they have a young roster, and just making them even younger could benefit them. I know they're in a playoff spot. As of right now, actually, I don't know if they are, but they're in the playoff race, at least in that division. And I do think that they could potentially make the postseason. So it makes them a tough team between a neutral or conservative seller. So however you want to put them, I'm going to put them in conservative selling. The Buffalo Sabres, similar situation to the Arizona Coyotes. They just don't have the assets to be a full selling team. So I'm going to put them as conservative seller. If they can get some picks and prospects, go for it. But I don't think they're going to push any trades. They don't really have any assets to do that. The Boston Bruins, my Boston Bruins, I'm going to put them at a conservative buyer. They don't really have many assets that personally I'd be willing to give up. Jake DeBrusk obviously requested a trade earlier in the season, as did Zach Senyshyn. So potentially we see one of those trades being moved. The Bruins do need some defensive help and some forward help. And I will go on an in-depth solo video discussing the Bruins, whether they should be buying or selling at the deadline. But as of right now on this tier ranking, we're going to put them as a conservative buyer. The Calgary Flames, I'm putting them as the buying. I think the Flames acquiring Tyler Toffoli kind of showed their hints of we're going to be buying. And whether that is the only trade that they make, I'm kind of going to consider it a trade deadline move, even though it's a month out. They are showing that they want to win the cup. They have a good team to do it. They have good goaltending, good defense, and I think they want to make moves to make them a better team to win that cup. The Carolina Hurricanes, similar situation to the other buying teams. They're going to be a buying team. They have a phenomenal roster. If they can make any moves, they're going to do it, and I think they're going to be more aggressive to do that. The Dallas Stars, I put in the neutral position. The Stars are kind of having an iffy year. Players like Joe Pavelski, who are getting up there in age, could potentially go to a contending team, and those are, John Klingberg as well could potentially be on the move, but I don't know if they're going to be as aggressive or even leaning towards selling. I think they're kind of going to stay neutral. And finally, the Seattle Kraken, the newest team in the NHL. They have Mark Giordano, who has been in conversation a lot. But for them, I'm putting them in neutral. But honestly, they might be leaning more so to conservative selling, because they are still a team who has a really, really small prospect pool. So if they can grow that faster, they might as well do that. So here is the full tier list ranking. Let me know what you guys think about it. Obviously, we're a month out. Tons of things could change. And again, I listed with a bunch of these teams that you could flip-flop between different categories. So let me know where you would put your favorite team. What are some teams that you disagree with? And if you want me to break down the Boston Bruins, I don't think I'm going to break down any other teams. But if you want me to break down the Boston Bruins one, let me know down in the comments below. Hit that like button on this video, subscribe for more, and I will be sure to see you in the next one. Peace out.